Good evening, good afternoon, or good morning for wherever you may be joining us for today's session, a part of the Trying Family web series, Finding Calm in the Chaos, Supporting Your Student During Uncertain Times. My name is Dan Perez. I'm the Associate Director for the Office of Parent and Family Programs, and I have the privilege to kick off and host tonight's Trying Family web series session. We just want to thank you for taking time out of your day to not only support your student by learning the strategies and resources the university offers for students throughout this challenging time, but also how you may be able to find some calmness during what's going on and moving forward as we venture into the future together. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce one of our two presenters, Dr. Tiffany O'Meara, who will give an overview of today's session.
Thank you so much, Dan. Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Tiffany O'Meara. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm the Director of Outreach Services at Counseling and Psychological Services, which is otherwise known as CAPS. And I manage our preventative skill-based workshops and our community-based programs. I run our Building Social Confidence and our Taming Anxiety therapy groups, and I provide outreach on topics such as stress management, building resilience, and increasing well-being. And here with me today is Dr. Araceli Lopez Arenas. Araceli?
Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Araceli Lopez Arenas, and I'm a psychologist with CAPS, and I'm the liaison to the Raza Resource Centro. And I run a group for our graduate and professional students called Ceviche Hour, which is a community connection space for our Latinx identifying individuals.
So today we're going to be talking about finding calm in the chaos, how to not only cope, but also how to flourish during uncertain times. And we'll be talking about how you can help encourage your student to practice self-care, but you may also find some of these strategies helpful for yourself. And this is important because students will look to parents as role models for practicing well-being. So if you're caring for yourself, they may be inspired to prioritize their self-care. So in our presentation for students, we ask them to identify, what would be one behavior that they would like to change. So as you're listening today, we want to encourage you to think about what might be one strategy that you might share with your student, or what is one behavior change that you might be interested in making that might help to reduce your stress, help with your stress management, and build resilience to get through uncertain times. All right, so here we go.
Well, welcome everybody. You and your college student worked really hard to get to this point, so please take a moment to congratulate yourself. Today, one of the ways that we can model supporting your student is to pause, take a moment to notice the present moment, and also be present and connected to others in this space. So sometimes students are running around all over campus, they're juggling multiple responsibilities, and they often forget to pause and focus on the present moment. So one of these ways, we're coming together, maybe we're coming from work, maybe we're in between picking up students or other children. So one simple stretch that I like to encourage our students that you are welcome to join is doing a coconut stretch. And it's simple as spelling out the coconut. You can do this standing or sitting. So if everybody can do a C, and then an O, a C, an O. We're going to bend down and touch our toes as an N. We're going to slowly come up in a U. And my most favorite letter is the T, where you can just stretch those arms out and just kind of go with where your body is. And so just notice how your body is maybe a little bit revitalized. There's a little bit of energy. And so that's a simple thing that when your student calls you and is saying, I'm so stressed out, you can remind them, hey, I learned this coconut stretch. How about we do it together? And that might be helpful for them. So it's also important to recognize the social context that we're living in at the current moment. There's so many things that may be impacting us and contributing to our stress levels. So for students, it's not just school and academics that are impacting their stress level. As college students grow and they're expanding their experience in the world, they may encounter they may be impacted by socio and geopolitical stressors that are contributing to these distress levels. So unfortunately, as parents, we're not there to be able to protect them as when they were under our direct care. And one of the things that you'll notice that a lot of students talk about is, or you may be hearing, that the university is losing funding. So there's increased competition for available, or there's limited resources. So for example, some students may come in and say, hey, you know, I'm having difficulty finding a research lab, or there's a lot more pressure to finish my education in a faster turnaround time. There's some hiring freezes, there's increased cost of goods and foods, and there's also immigration stressors. So some people may be afraid to travel. They may be unable to see families for an extended period of time, or they're witnessing friends or peers being impacted by these stressors. There's also fears and concerns about being able to express their identities and being themselves. There's concern for our well-being and safety of families. And overall, there's a lot of uncertainty and unpredictability. So when things are uncertain and unpredictable, the stress and the anxiety goes up. So sometimes it can feel like it's relentless and something new and terrible is happening every day. So if we're watching the news, everything is breaking news, unprecedented. And this may all contribute to heightened underlying anxiety for many of our students. So when things feel hopeless and powerless, some individuals may be compelled to take action and get involved in activities that they find empowering and of service. This involvement may add additional stressors as they balance values-based actions with the academic rigor of being at the university, particularly UC San Diego. And so this may also have an impact on family and social interaction. So we just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge the real impact that this is having on all of us and how we can best support our students. So how do we address these current stressors, particularly in this social context? So one is we recommend limiting and taking breaks from media consumption. So we often get bombarded, like I said, by breaking news, unprecedented events, and it's important to monitor our intake in the news, kind of like you don't want to eat too much ice cream, right? Then it's really good at first, and then you're like, oh, it's too sweet. So it's also important to determine our sources of news and whether these are factual or misleading, and notice how it is impacting us. So what do you observe? Is the news triggering me or motivating me to engage in productive ways? And so these are things that we can ask our students. You can ask your students, you know, how much news are you consuming and from where? So sometimes we may also need to limit conversations that may escalate the conflict. So this could be with family and or friends, and it's okay to set boundaries with them. So according to Dr. Brene Brown, boundaries are simply determining what's okay and what's not okay. So within this square, inside is okay, outside is not okay. And we want to be able to communicate that to others in a mindful, respectful, and assertive way. So this may mean setting boundaries with you. That sometimes we may or may not like those, right? So to support our students and promote their well-being, you might want to consider actively listening to their needs and wants and creating a safe space for them to practice asserting themselves. So sometimes they're calling and they don't really want a solution. And you can ask them, do you want, you know, some coaching, or do you want me to just listen and ask for what they need? And so you may be the safest person that they can lean on. So validating and respecting those boundaries can go a really long way. You might want to also encourage them to connect with their support system. So we're social beings, and it's important to stay connected with the people that support us. So if your student is isolating, encourage them to attend social events, whether they're personal and or professional. So maybe it's a networking event. Maybe they're anxious about work. So, hey, have you gone to the Career Center and their networking event? And sometimes it may be necessary to limit time or set boundaries with people who are not supportive and increase time with those who do nourish us. Another point is that we can support their civic engagement. As I mentioned earlier, when things feel hopeless, uncertain, powerless, students may feel compelled to engage in civic activities. This could be activism, volunteerism, community engagement, and you want to support their activities, even if they might differ from your beliefs or preferences. But just remind your student that it's important to take a bird's eye view and assess where they may have an impact. So for example, my presenting to you today is a way in which I can make a positive impact. So what might that look like for you and your student? And this can range for your student, and remind them that whatever level of involvement they decide to engage in is perfect for them.
So in addition to those suggestions, another way that we can stay resilient in the face of academic and other life stressors is by making sure that we're doing things that sustain our health and well-being. And so these suggestions that we're going to be offering today may seem like common sense, but research has found that common sense is not always common action. And there's really no secrets to stress management, but the hard part can be making these things a regular part of our routine so that we can access them when we do encounter a stressor or a challenge. So, we want to ask you, what is your self-care strategy? What's something that works for you? Or do you know what is one of your students' self-care strategies? So we're going to go over the next slide. We'll show you we've categorized self-care strategies using a CARE acronym. So, if students are feeling bad about current events, you may encourage them to please try to avoid feeling bad about feeling bad. It's okay to feel those feelings. And instead of trying to push down those feelings, you can ask them, well, what can you do to soothe yourself? So there's things that we've identified, again, based on research. So C stands for connections. So making connections and building relationships. This is one of the most important factors of well-being, and also one of the main ways that we grow after going through something really difficult. And it helps even if you have just one person in your life who you feel like is able to listen non-judgmentally and be supportive. And these close relationships can help reduce loneliness and provide support during difficult times. And if they don't have a close friend nearby, encourage them to pick up the phone, call a friend or a family member. Just hearing a loved one's voice can be helpful. Texting is fine too, but sometimes there's something that just feels really soothing about being able to hear a loved one's voice. A stands for appetite. So our brains regulate mood by having healthy levels of chemicals or neurotransmitters available. And we make these neurotransmitters from the building blocks that we get from our food. So that's why having a proper diet is one of the first steps we can take to help prevent an unbalanced mood. So healthy nutrition, that means eating healthy, well-balanced meals that include things like proteins, fruits, and vegetables. And you may think that healthy food is more expensive, but on campus, residential dining makes efforts to make the prices of healthy options comparable to other food items. Another resource is the hub on campus that has a lot of different resources to help students get access to nutritious food. So we're going to be putting some of those links in the chat for you for our basic needs hub. And if students are uncertain about meal planning, there are registered dietitians on campus that we have that can provide them personal consultation. And again, we'll include those links in the chat. R stands for relaxation and rest. So relaxation skills can include many different types of activity. It's whatever helps you to center yourself and take time to relax and reflect upon values, maybe focus on personal goal setting and refreshing before engaging in the world again. I'll often ask students what they do for relaxation, and they'll say, oh, well, I doom scroll on my social media or I play video games. And those things are fine for leisure, but are they really going to be relaxing? Are they going to be rejuvenating for you? So I ask them to additionally see if they can identify something that might help them to, feel renewed. Also sleep. Sleep needs are important. And for most young adults, 18 to 25 years old, they function at their best between about 7 to 9 hours of sleep. And sleep impacts learning, memory, our mood. And so getting enough sleep is really going to help students function at their best. And when they don't get enough sleep, that really can impair their academic performance. So we've also got a couple of great sleep hygiene handouts that we're going to share as well. And then E stands for exercise and engagement. And so research has shown that regular exercise is associated with greater emotional resilience, which is a key to help us get through difficult times. And so that physical activity or exercise or even movement, maybe your student is not one that's going to be exercising 5 days a week, but even moving, choosing to get up and move, that's going to look different for everyone. So the important thing is to find what works for you. And the science behind exercise working at improving our mood is because in part it releases what's known as the good brain chemicals, those neurotransmitters. So these are endorphins, serotonin, dopamine. And so with improved mood, we can have greater emotional bandwidth to better cope with stress and anxiety. So those are just one of the reasons why that movement and exercise can be so important. And then another big part of well-being is to increase a sense of engagement in our lives. And one way to do this is through hobbies. So having a hobby may sound simple or frivolous, but it's actually a really key part of self-care because they give us time and permission to slow down. We get away from work and other life stressors. It helps get us out of our head and gives us a space to participate in something that we call flow. So that's when we're engaged in the present moment. We absorb ourselves into something that we're doing that we feel passionate about. And the great thing is we don't have to be good at it. We just have to like doing it. And students often put so much pressure on themselves to excel in academics and at work, but hobbies are one area where they can just give themselves a break and just allow themselves to be in the present moment without judgment of their performance. And so another strategy we'll share is, another link that we'll share, another resource is for the Craft Center on campus, which allows students a place to be able to take a break and get that creative brain moving. We also have a link for you to a handout that we created that includes these different areas of self-care. It's called Taking Care of Yourself During Uncertain Times. So feel free to share that with students or use that yourself. And finally, really want to encourage students not to get overwhelmed with all of these areas. Maybe they could pick one or two areas that they would like to keep up regularly. And the secret of success is not to do all of these things perfectly, but really to pick one or two and do them fairly well, and regularly. And that can really make a big difference. In addition to behavioral suggestions, the next slide, we'll talk about things that you can do that have to do with our mindset. So, it can be helpful to be aware of our thoughts, how our thoughts might be contributing to our stress levels. And so, ask yourself some of these questions. Are these current stressors that are going on? Are they having a big impact on me? Am I thinking about them a lot? Are they bringing back bad memories for me? Are they coming into my mind when I wish that they wouldn't? Am I thinking about current events even when I'm trying to think about other things? And so when that happens, it can be helpful to think about managing our thoughts. And it can be helpful to explore, what changes might we make in our thinking that really can have a positive impact on how we feel. So when I work with students, I'll talk about how our thoughts are connected to our feelings and our behaviors, and those are all interrelated. So if you work on changing some of your thoughts, you can impact how you feel and how you behave. And so some components of a resilient mindset are self-compassion. So self-compassion is when we are kind, we practice patience with ourselves and understanding, and we try to be nurturing to ourselves. It's when we extend kindness to ourselves, even when we experience failures, low productivity and feelings of inadequacy, which for students, those can be really difficult because some of them have never experienced those kind of challenges before. And we tend to be harder on ourselves than we are with others when we go through difficult times. So it's really important that we exercise that self-compassion because that helps to reduce our own suffering and it helps make it easier to overcome hardships. So that's one of the first things I'll say to students. This week, what you're going to be practicing is working on some self-compassion. Next is focusing on what you can control. So anxiety is a feeling of worry and nervousness about events and outcomes that feel uncertain. And so it can be really emotionally stressful when things in our external environment feel out of our control and uncertain. But of course, it's going to be really draining if we continue to put our energy into those things that we can't control. So instead, I'll talk with students about, trying to shift to what they have more control over. And so perhaps their internal environment, their thoughts, their feelings, the healthy living habits that we've just discussed. And you may find that you feel better and you'll have a lower need for external control if you can focus more on that internal control. Next is engage versus disengage. So knowing when to engage. So for students like Araceli mentioned, participating in activism, any leadership positions that they hold, or focusing on helping others. So knowing when to engage in those things and when to disengage, or at least giving themselves permission to disengage. That's really important to remember. I see a lot of student leaders who it's really hard for them to disengage, and it doesn't make them any less of an activist or a student leader by not being on all of the time. Saying to themselves, it's okay for me to take a break from this, it's okay for me to take time for myself, is really a key of preventing burnout and enhancing self-care. And some students that I work with who work as RAs, resident advisors, I'll say, you setting boundaries and taking care of yourself, you're actually role modeling for other students how that's important or why that's important. Next is taking things one day and one step at a time. So when experiencing a crisis, it can be helpful to focus just on the present moment and take things one day or even just one step at a time. So practicing turning your attention to what is going on right in front of you in that given moment and try to have peace with that. So for students that are worried a lot about what's going on, can they give themselves permission just to be in the present moment and focus on what it is that they're studying? Or when they take a shower, can they let go of their studies? Can they let go of these problems and just enjoy the feel of that water on their back? Simply allow them to be in that present moment, take some deep breaths, and really let go of those other thoughts. And finally, it's really during difficult times in which we grow and find purpose. And sometimes that's hard, I think, for students. In the moment, when we go through something difficult, we can think a situation is awful, but it's often during difficult times that we learn more about ourselves. We use our skills to cope and we come out stronger. Those of us who are older, right? We know this. We know that we can get out of difficult situations and be okay and even stronger. And it's not until looking back that we often have the perspective to realize that, those were the times that were important to make us who we are. And that being said, there are going to be things in life that are going to be difficult to cope with. So it's not that we should accept unfair or oppressive situations, but it's more that we normalize our reaction to those situations. We use our skills to cope, and we use our strengths to flourish during those difficult times. There's also a handout that we'll share. We actually created it during COVID, during the pandemic, but I think that we can use this at any time that someone's going through something difficult, and it shares some of this resilient mindset. All right. And then the next slide is another resilient mindset to practice is gratitude. To ask ourselves, what am I grateful for today? With so many stressors like the ones that we mentioned at the start of the presentation, it might seem strange to suggest that we focus on what we're grateful for, but our brain has a negative bias. It will automatically think of the things that are going on that are difficult. And research suggests that focusing on the positive, that focusing on gratitude is very powerful because it has the power to energize and bring hope. And when times are tough, focusing on what we're thankful for helps us to be more resilient. When we appreciate the good in our lives, it can decrease anxiety and depression and helps us remain calm when we're facing uncertainty. It also helps to reduce burnout. And so because our brain doesn't do that naturally, We really have to intentionally take in the good. So Araceli's going to go over oh, I know, really quick. We're going to share in the chat a link to 2 videos. One video is a video on gratitude, which is a beautiful, beautiful video that really, you feel what that means. And then the other video is a kind of a funny video. And one of the students in this video writes his mom a gratitude letter. So it's very cute. Definitely want to encourage you to take a few minutes and watch those at the end of the presentation. But Araceli is going to take you through an exercise that you might want to do with your student.
Sure.
Next slide.
Great. So I put the links in the chat for you to view, and the one I'm referencing is called a gratitude letter. And so we recommend that you watch the video on your own, or you can watch it with your student via Zoom. And based on the gratitude video we just encourage you to watch, we encourage both you and your student to try out the exercise. And so, as Tiffany said, remember that research has shown that the expression of gratitude contributes to overall happiness in life. And as my partner continues to tell me every time that I'm struggling, oh, I'm burnt out, oh, so stressed, he's like, oh, time for gratitude. And I'm like, oh, you're so right. And it always works, right? So the exercise, so with our students, right? So sometimes they're like, I don't have time for this, or I'm so stressed. And it's like, okay, well, how about we do this together? And so how about we both carve out time to do this exercise together? And so the exercise is to think about somebody who's influential in your life, someone who did something really amazing or important for you, and write down as much as you can about why this person is so important. And after this, you can reach out to that person and or read or send them what you wrote about them. And so think about how would, taking the time, right? We're so busy. So what would it mean to just take the time and think about, wow, who is important to me? Maybe it's you as a parent, maybe it's a professor, maybe it's a mentor. So it could be anybody. And how do you think it'll positively affect them? And how is it impacting you? And so how many people can you do this with? So it's not just one person, right? You can do this continuously. Next slide. So many of us may be wondering, this is great, and what else can I do? How else can I support my student? Well, there's different ways in which we can support our students, and we'll talk about some of those resources. The thing that I like to tell people is about mindfulness. And so how many of you have heard about mindfulness? It's very popular right now. And so according to Dr. John Kabat-Zinn, he defines mindfulness as having 3 components. 1, paying attention. 2, on purpose. And 3, most importantly, without judgment, because we tend to be judgy McJudgers, right? So we judge things very dichotomously. Either things are good or bad, pretty or ugly, productive, unproductive. And so asking ourselves, how do we judge ourselves in these ways? So imagine how our students might be judging themselves, particularly due to academic pressures. A lot of what I hear especially for the first gen students that I see, but a lot of, they really care about what you think. They don't want to disappoint you. They really want to try their best. And so this is an added pressure that they add to themselves because they really value you and the support and how you have supported them getting into and graduating. So meditation can be a form of mindfulness, and it's not about being in a space with any thoughts or feelings and your mind going blank in the typical Zen, right? So for our students, sometimes it's their first introduction. So it's actually more about noticing or being aware of the thoughts, of the feelings, of the physical sensations and or their actions or inactions that they're engaging in. And so that could be really helpful. Next slide. So one really nice tool is called Headspace. I don't know if any of you have that already, but if you don't know how to meditate or, fear not, Headspace is there to assist. And the students can use the guided meditation, and they range from as short as 1 minute to 10 minutes. And so if they have about 10 minutes, and this is a good practice to implement in their daily schedule. And what's really cool is that this year we have a family plan. So not only can your student download the app for free, they can also gift it up to 5 friends and family members outside of UCSD. So if they haven't done it yet, remind them, hey, you have access. And I think Tiffany is putting the flyers. They do have to go through the special link in order to get it for free.
Yes, go through the first one, the iFlourish webpage link. Don't go to your app store on your phone and you'll get a free student version, but it won't be the completely upgraded one that we've already paid for. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So go to the
Yeah.
iFlourish webpage to get that free version.
And next slide. And so if you don't have this app yet, this is a screenshot. So they have, showing gratitude. So they have some gratitude meditations. And then when I opened it up this morning, it said managing stress, learn more. And so, so they have also courses like CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy for anxiety and depression. This is our gold standard for treating depression and anxiety. And it's really cool. It's very easy. I love the images and just very simple text to communicate the message. And I actually use it sometimes. Sometimes I just need a little de-stressor between meetings. And so it's been very helpful. Next slide.
All right, so we want to do another exercise. So want to take a little thermometer reading. Let's take our temperature. So observe how you're feeling right now. So emotionally, physiologically, on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being the lowest and 10 being the highest level of anxiety, where would you place your anxiety currently? So just take note of that. Where would be your temperature? And right now we're going to practice a strategy called grounding. So grounding is a recentering technique used to pause. It can help you get unstuck and refocus and come back to that present moment. And it's a sensory experience that you can use anywhere, anytime. And we're going to practice one grounding technique together called the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So I would like to request that you take a moment and practice this with me. So without saying it out loud, observe 5 things that you can see in your room. And perhaps this is something that you've never observed before. So look for 5 things that you can see, and you can not only see objects, you could see colors. My water bottle is pink and blue. So 5 things. So go ahead and take a moment and do that. And next, observe 4 things that you can feel. And so that can include things like the chair on my back or my feet on the floor. So go ahead and take a moment and feel 4 things. And then observe 3 things that you can hear right now. If you're not hearing anything, you can make the sounds. And then observe 2 things that you can smell right now. And either one thing that you can taste, or you can think of one good thing about yourself. All right, now retake your temperature. How do you feel emotionally? What do you feel in your body? And what number would you give yourself right now? I'll often have students tell me that during the activity, they were completely focused on the activity and they weren't thinking about their worries. Another student created a self-soothe kit that includes something pleasing for each of their 5 senses. So when they felt upset, they would pull out this kit and it would help to ground them in the present moment and provide comfort to them. So a lot of students will like these types of activities.
So we often get students that say, I don't have time. I don't have time to do this. I'm so busy. And so one simple thing that we can encourage them to do is have them do 1 minute of deep breathing. And I usually like to ask students, what is the difference between 1 minute on the treadmill versus 1 minute snoozing your alarm? And so the students are really thinking about it and they're like trying to come up with answers. And the answer is nothing. It's just the perception of time. So if we're on the treadmill, we're like, oh my gosh, how many more seconds do I have to go? But the snooze, we're like, wait, what? That wasn't even a minute. And so it's the perception of time. And we all have a minute to spare. If not, we can reframe it as we can make the time for 1 minute to reset. Next slide. The other skill is, breathing. And so the question is, why do we keep suggesting you to breathe when you're stressed, anxious, or distressed? And I've had so many people roll their eyes at me with that suggestion. And so, yes, I know I used to be that person. And part of the recommendation for this, it's because it's biology. It's about our autonomic nervous system. So we want to, when we're in fight or flight, like, oh, anxious. So that's our sympathetic nervous system that sympathizes with our stress. And so it's activated. So it's that fight, flight, or freeze response. What we want to do is through the deep breathing. So breathing, diaphragmatic breathing, breathing from our belly, not our chest, is that we take these deep breaths. And this is how we activate the parachute or the parasympathetic nervous system to say, hey, it's okay. We're good. We're going to take it step by step. And so this is really helpful. And so as I was saying, the sympathetic system gets activated. So that's our run or fight or flight. And so we just want to work with our students to deep breathe, activate this parachute to help us calm down, because the calmer we are, then our frontal lobe can do its job, and then it can think more clearly, it can think more rationally, it can, sit down and study, and the memory is a little bit better. And so these are just some few things. And the thing that I also like to say is that breathing is within your control. So everything else may not be within your control, but your breath is. Next slide.
All right, so we just have another couple minutes. I'm going to get through these slides pretty quickly here. Just want to say that, when we wake up in the morning, it's not the default to practice some of these strategies. So it can involve, intentional, purposeful actions. And so again, folks who are successful in managing their stress and being resilient, they're making a choice to engage in some of these behaviors or these mindsets. And some of this might seem like a lot of work at first, but it's really something that can become the default with practicing it enough. And you don't have to get all your ducks in a row to make a start. There's no better time to start than now. So let's go ahead and really quick, I'll run through the CAP services. This is a list of the different services that we provide at CAPS. We have individual and group counseling, medication evaluations, and medication management. It's all free and confidential for UCESD students. We also have crisis services available 24/7. This is even, holidays and weekends. So they call the same CAPS phone number, press option 2 if it's after hours. And then that's our website there if you want to take a quick picture of that. Oh, actually, Dan's going to be sending all of this out to you, so you'll have it. And then the next slide, we also have a lot of great skill building workshops. And the next slide, you've got some pictures here of some of our amazing programs that we collaborate with Recreation and Outback Adventures. So we do these programs to teach these skills, but we do it while they're doing things that they're having lots of fun. And then also we have some support spaces where students can connect and come together. We'll share all of these different websites and flyers for you as well. Oh, I see that Araceli is working on starting to share some of these flyers to a lot of our services, but I want to make sure we have some time for questions here.
Thank you both for that just amazing and in-depth presentation. And before we finish, we do have a few questions. One of the first questions from a parent is, are students able to access counseling and psychological services, those services after they graduate?
I can take that. So, students, after they graduate, if they are already CAPS clients, if they already have scheduled an appointment and started seeing someone at CAPS, they are given what we call 3 courtesy visits. And so, for example, I'm wrapping up with a student. We actually just had our last session this morning. And, I said, I can still see you for 3 courtesy visits during the summer before the next quarter starts in the fall. And so that's just as a way to kind of help them to get maybe connected to new services, or if they need to start a graduate program or they need to find a job and get insurance. It gives them a little bit of breathing room there to help get them. But that's the key, is that they need to have their first appointment before they graduate. So if they're thinking about wanting to see someone or get some assistance, I would try to schedule that appointment as soon as possible.
Mhm.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
Another question from a parent is, what should students look to do if they have found their initial experiences with CAPS maybe haven't been as helpful as they were seeking, or how do they go about finding additional resources?
I can answer that one. Yeah, I think that's an excellent question. I think that I always say that finding a therapist is like dating, where you kind of have to find the right fit. So you have to maybe try out a few people. So if your student is matched with a therapist, I like to say, sometimes it's about scheduling. If I'm not the right fit, no hard feelings. I'm happy to assign you to somebody else. And if the student is like, no, I don't want to do CAPS, I'm not finding anybody. We also have a CAPS staff list. So students are encouraged to read through the different profiles to see who they might be assigned to. And if not, then we can give them a referral off campus. So it's very simple, especially if they have UC SHIP, or regardless of the insurance, we will work with them to find them and connect them. And we can provide them with bridge care until they connect with an off-campus provider. I don't know if you have any other questions or additional things, Tiffany, to that, but.
Yeah.
Well, I was just gonna say that, sometimes it can be hard for students to assert themselves. I know a lot of students get anxious, about, saying, oh, that therapist wasn't a good match for me. And so as a parent, I think it just can be helpful to encourage them, because that's going to happen in life, right? You don't like your
Mhm.
physician and you want to switch your physician. You don't like the therapist you got connected to. And so, just reassuring them that that does happen. Sometimes people get matched with someone that's not a good match for them, and encouraging them that it's okay to call back and ask for somebody different.
And to ask for somebody to be matched with somebody, this is the type of therapy that I would love to have. And even if they've never had therapy before, that, empowering them to ask for what they need.
Mhm.
Thank you. Okay, we have 2 last questions. First is, I think, a quick one, but question coming from a family member that asked that they saw a reference to health coaching revolving around eating, time management, etc. And they're asking, is that a part of counseling and psychological services?
So for counseling and psychological services, we see students for all kinds of reasons. So we absolutely see students that are struggling with major mental health conditions. The most common is anxiety and stress, depression. But we also see students for roommate challenges, their first romantic relationship, navigating that, feeling homesick. And absolutely, we see students with having difficulty with academics and difficulty focusing, difficulty managing their time, not knowing how to eat healthy, not knowing how to sleep healthy. And so we absolutely provide counseling and guidance for those types of issues. Araceli, do you want to add anything about that?
Yeah, I think that some of our staff have specialties. So for example, I have a public health background, and so I work with students with some chronic disease. And so, oh, I just got diagnosed with diabetes. I need help with lifestyle changes. So there's, therapists that have specialties, and we also have the Student Health Center that they do health coaching as well. So they have the health and prevention program. There's smoking cessation. There's lots of different programming that they have. And I put in there the CAPS calendar, but they also have a list of a calendar with activities that they could also connect to. And, they can just give us a call. And if we're not the right fit, we will refer them to the right service that they need.
And I'm going to put in a little plug for our therapy groups too. And I'm going to try to put this in the chat at the same time as I'm as I'm talking, because we also have therapy groups. Not every problem is best met individually, one-on-one. Sometimes it's best to meet in a group. So for example, my area of interest is social anxiety and general anxiety. And so I run a taming anxiety therapy group and a building social confidence therapy group. We have a therapy group for students who are on the spectrum that help teach basic social skills. We also have an eating disorders program for students that need support with an eating disorder. So lots of different group therapy as well as individual.
And Tiffany, do you want to mention the CIC briefly?
Yeah, sure. So CIC is a program that we have that is for students that might need a little bit more focused attention. They not only get individual counseling, but they also get group counseling as well. And it helps teach them DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy skills, CBT. They work very, very closely with students on a regular basis. It's a program that we just started this year. So for students that are experiencing a crisis and they need that more intensive support, that program is a great program, but they all get into CAPS the same way, which is making that first phone call to schedule a first phone appointment where someone will meet with them for about 20 minutes and they'll find out why it is that they're coming in and what they're interested in, and they'll help them get connected. Araceli, anything else you want to add about the CIC?
No, just know that we have, a lot of different robust programs, and so we meet students at where they're at. So some of them may not have a clinical diagnosis, and so they're just needing some strategy. So we have interventions for that. Some people may have a clinical diagnosis, and so we'll treat them at that level. And some of them may have higher level of needs, like Tiffany just described. And so all we say is just come call us. The hard first step is just recognizing, hey, I may need professional help. And two, making that call, making the appointment, keeping the appointment, and coming back. And so we can definitely assess and refer to the appropriate program. So I see a question about, sleep hygiene, and no, you're not alone. They are not alone. And so I think that is a common issue. And so we have a Sleep Better group that they can attend, and they can work with that with their individual therapist as well.
I also see a question about the SHIP insurance plan. The great news is that CAPS is not paid for through insurance. CAPS is paid for through the student fees. So students have already paid for CAPS services. They just need to come in and use it. And so that's great. That's, CAPS services are free for students because they've already paid for it with their student fees. Now, if they need to go off campus because they're interested in more regular care or they need more longer term treatment, then that's when we use insurance to help them with that.
And I see the other question that a student's having issues with depression due to long COVID and not in a condition to reach out to you folks. Definitely understand that. Sometimes the symptoms of depression can be severe enough that they have difficulty doing, what we call basic things, activities of daily living, getting out of bed, showering, making that phone call, right? And so one of the things that I like to encourage students and parents as well is to make the call with them. Don't do it for them, but do it with them. So even when I'm referring off campus and I say, hey, did you call? And they're like, no, I didn't. Did you call? No, I didn't. And instead of like, why didn't you call? To say, okay, let's do it together. Is it okay if we call together? And so we're encouraging self-determination, right? That they're part of this process, because if we do it for them, then, what happens when we're not there to help them? And so it's really about empowering them and showing them, hey, And often what I hear is like, oh, that wasn't that hard. That was easier than I thought. And sometimes we make the anxiety just or the symptoms of depression make it a little bit harder. So you can reach out with the student. If you call us, we will give you some resources, but it's really important that we connect with the student because that also means that they are consenting to receive treatment from us.
Araceli, I'll add this though, that if a parent wants to call and consult, they can call the CAPS phone number that I put there in the chat, and they can ask to speak to a therapist to consult about their child. And you'll be given the person that's working, they're called the resource psychologist. They're working that day to see students in crisis, and they also can consult with parents. They can hear your concern and talk about the different resources that we have and can help talk with you about what can be some things that you can do to try to get your student in. They can also talk with you about other resources, like help you get connected to the dean, for example, because the dean is able to talk with parents in a way that we're not able to because it's confidential. We can't share that we've even seen a student in counseling. So yes, parents can call and consult with us. So that's another that's another service that's available.
Mhm.
Well, again, thank you both so much for spending time with us and sharing your expertise and these strategies and really putting not only the students' well-being, but also some of our families' well-being at the forefront. We really appreciate your participation in today's Trying Family Web series. And before I let our audience go, just a few reminders. If you would like to share this recording with someone who may not have English as a first language or would like to watch it back in translated subtitles, you can do that by utilizing the auto translate tool listed on screen through our YouTube channel. And lastly, this is going to be the last Trying Family Web series for the academic year for 24-25. Crazy that commencement is in only a few weeks, and we'll be working on welcoming the incoming class of fall 2025. But we will be back again in November with our first session of the Trying Family Web series. Before then, you can head to our YouTube channel, which is listed on screen, to watch any of the recordings of this year's Trying Family Web series sessions or previous years as well. And you may see Dr. Amira on some of our presentations from previous years as well, as she has been a continued fabulous partner. I just want to say thank you so much again for taking time out of your day to support your students' well-being and your student success here at UC San Diego. If we didn't get to a question this evening, please feel free to email us at parents@ucsd.edu, and we will ensure that we can get that question answered for you or connect you to the best resource that would be able to provide you support. Have a great rest of your day, your evening, or your afternoon. And again, thank you so much for attending.